Welcome, everyone, to the Asian Voices Radio podcast, where you'll find real Asian American conversations about all things, including the topics you were too afraid to ask your Asian parents. I'm your host, Hula Ramos, and today we're talking about mental health, which is something a lot of people are going through, especially with the pandemic right now being a major cause. And today we have Dr. Amy Kim. She's a licensed clinical psychologist, and she has extensive experience working with adults struggling with anxiety, depression, stress, negative habits, and much more. Dr. Kim is skilled at helping people with the challenges of being present in today's fast-paced, pressured, and often stressful world. Hi, Dr. Kim. How are you?
Good, Hula. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being on today's show, especially with a lot of things going on. I know there's a lot of Asian American and Pacific Islander folks that are dealing with mental health. And to be honest with you, they don't really talk about it.
I think that's that's been an ongoing issue. And then particularly with COVID, people are struggling. A lot of people are struggling with a lot of different things. And so I think it's more needed than ever that Asians are able to kind of overcome the stigma of being able to share that they're struggling and actually talk to people and actually get help, whether it's from a professional or just from friends and family.
No, you're right. It's a very big stigma that, Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders don't talk about your dirty laundry. You just kind of have to deal with it. Now, coming from yourself, what advice would you give to those people dealing with challenges right now?
Well, it's even thinking of it as dirty laundry is like it's kind of a shame that people even think of it as like dirty laundry or something you have to hide because
Mhm.
that automatically makes it shameful. And the way I think it's better to think about it is like everybody struggles. Everyone's got struggles. Everyone goes through hardships. That's part of a human life, right? Everyone goes through
Right.
things. So if we can just kind of make it really normal and really universal that everyone's going to struggle, everyone struggles with things. So that way it's not this like dirty, shameful secret. It's going to be easier to talk to people. So I think first of all, it's thinking of your issues in a different way, and then starting with the people you feel comfortable with, being able to reveal to people, friends, family, coworkers, like, hey, I'm having a hard time. And just by starting to talk about it, people are amazed. Like just by starting to honestly talk about whatever you're going through already promotes healing. It already helps a person feel better to just talk about it. And actually another false idea that a lot of people have, and I've heard it come from I've heard Asian people say this as well, is like, well, what's the point? What's the point of
Right.
talking about it? It's like, it's not like anyone can fix it for me, um or I don't want to worry people. It's not about worrying other people, and it's not about getting other people to fix your problem. It's just the act of sharing and having another person just listen to you is deeply therapeutic.
In what ways? Like you say, it's so therapeutic. I mean, for those that are naysayers that say, well, it's not helping me, like how does that help to let it all out?
You kind of have to experience it yourself to know, like, I get this from people, I get this from clients, I get this from friends. I've experienced it myself. We're just literally talking and being able to, someone else just being given the space and the time
Mhm.
to just talk about what you're going through, you immediately feel better. Most of the time, you just feel better. And just knowing that someone is just listening to you without interrupting, without trying to fix you, um, without anything, just to just to be given that space and that time is healing. But you can only, like I said, you can only know it if you experience it directly.
So, in your experience with everything going on, what are some common mental health issues that are going on right now that you've seen?
Oh, there's so many. There's so many. Let's just
I,
talk about, on so many levels, COVID has brought up a lot of fears about health, a lot of fears about the state of the world. There's just kind of generally world events that are stoking people's anxieties and fears more than ever. I think that because COVID has been so disruptive to so many people's lives, people have been trying over the last year, and it's been a long time to really adjust to whatever ways that they or their families have been uniquely affected, whether it's a death, whether it's being infected with COVID directly, whether it's financial stress, whether it's work-life balance stress, whether it's your child is suffering or I mean, there's been so many changes, and I always like to say that, every family, every person's life is different, and everyone's circumstances are unique. So
Hmm.
people have had to make major adjustments, and this is a situation where every single life has been affected. So there's massive adjustments there. I think that there are also people who might have been struggling with certain issues before, certain family issues, certain maybe some depression, maybe some anxiety, maybe some substance abuse, whatever issues in their lives. And COVID has kind of brought already existing issues more to the forefront, where people can, people are realizing like maybe it's a good time to start working on it, or I actually do need help. Um, those are just some of the ones that come to mind.
No, I agree with you. I have something personal I kind of want to bring up because for me, growing up Filipino, my parents are always like, "Don't talk about it. You don't talk about it." And it's caused me just the pressures of being the oldest child and dealing with good grades and all that kind of stuff. Make sure the family's protected, make sure the family's taken care of. It's caused me to have a lot of anxiety in my life. And I didn't learn about it until later in my life how to deal with it. But like, let's say somebody is just starting. How can we, besides talking about it, are there other ways that we can address or deal with like anxiety and issues like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, okay, first of all, if there are people in your life who are saying don't talk about it, what I would say is don't talk about it with them. Definitely don't talk about it with them.
Right, absolutely.
And don't talk about it in front of them. But I bet there are certain people in your life who would be willing to listen to you and happy to listen to you. And if they only knew that you were struggling, they would be more than willing and available to help you and just support you. And then the other thing is make how you're feeling, and this goes for everybody, make how you're feeling and your mental, emotional well being, make it a top priority because
Mm,
people don't, it's like, it's so obvious that it's important, but it also is not very common that that people make their mental, emotional health a top priority. I mean, if you don't have your, people talk about physical health, like, oh, if you don't have your health, then you have nothing, right? But
right.
how about if you don't have your mental, emotional health? I mean, that's your entire quality of life. That's primary. So I would start by saying, I would start with like, start treating it as really, really important because then it orients you to start thinking about like, what do I really need for myself right now? What do I really want right now? What would really help me right now? What would make me feel supported and good or relaxed or whatever it is? And then that further points you in the direction of what you might be needing in that moment. Maybe it is to talk to somebody. Maybe it is to just take some time for yourself. Maybe, I don't know what it's going to be. It's different for everybody, but make it important.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. And I know this is kind of a phrase that's been thrown around lately, especially with what we've been going through with the pandemic. But I've commonly heard the phrase, it's okay to not be okay. What does that mean to you?
Be honest that you're struggling. Be honest with yourself and be honest with people that you feel comfortable being honest with that you're struggling. Because then, if you're, first of all, if you don't acknowledge that you're struggling, even to yourself, there's no chance of getting help. There's no chance of helping yourself, right? First,
Right, right.
like if there's any kind of problem, which even outside of yourself, if you don't acknowledge that there's a problem, there's no solving it. So just being honest with yourself and then to people that you feel comfortable with, like to just acknowledge that there's a struggle. So that way you can start taking steps towards helping yourself.
I like that. Acknowledgement is definitely key. Um, and for me, I've been able to speak to, I've and gone to therapy, which I think is, something that no one in my family has done. I was the first one to do that. And now my siblings are starting to go and it's kind of a becoming a thing. Um, are there little, I've learned through therapy of little techniques and ways to kind of calm my nerves or calm the mental health. Like, do you know of stuff people could do and, just sitting there if they're going through something?
What's worked for you? What have you found to be really helpful for you?
Well, one therapist told me because my brain is constantly thinking and I'm constantly like, oh no, I need to make sure I have enough money so I can pay my mortgage. And then, oh no, I have to pay for my daughter's upcoming first communion. So I got to buy her a dress. And oh no, I have to make sure my car payment's on time. That I'm constantly throwing myself all of these oh no's. And instead, my therapist told me, why don't you label everything? Think of it as like tabs on a computer, and you're just going to tackle one tab at a time. Okay, what's your first tab? Your first tab is going to be your car payment. How are we going to handle that? You come up with a solution. All right, now store that tab away. Let it go away so you're not thinking about it. And kind of seeing your brain as more of a tackle one issue at a time and move on versus like coming at you with this and this and this and this and this. And, a lot of that has kind of helped me because I'll be honest, when I'm driving down the freeway on the 15 here in San Diego, there's a lot of times I'm thinking about the worst stuff that's happening.
Yeah, the difference between the two ways of approaching what you're talking about that your therapist recommended is really important because one is a position, the oh no approach is like, oh my God, I'm helpless, I'm powerless. I feel like things are out of control. I feel like things are happening to me. And then the way she or he's been encouraging you to think about it is like, wait a second, I'm in charge. I know what needs to be done and I'm going to handle it. Right.
Right.
It's the same things that you're going to do, but radically different approaches. And so instead of framing it as, oh no, as soon as you say, oh no, you're basically signaling stress and worry. And instead,
Ah,
what you're doing is saying, okay, what do you want? And what I really encourage my clients, because it's amazing how many of us are not trained to think this way. But it
right.
is so important. There's four things that I talk about that are so important in terms of how to really promote a person's mental and emotional health, which is what do you think? What do you feel? What do you want? And what do you need? And the reason why these things are really important is because a lot of times we have not been encouraged to have our own thoughts, or we have not been supported in terms of our feelings and our emotions being treated as legitimate and valid and important. And then also related is we haven't been really taught that our needs are important, that our wants are important. So it's like you're bringing yourself back to yourself to plug into yourself to say, wait a second, what do I think? What do I feel? What do I want? What do I need? So let's go back to what you were talking about, Hula. You're saying, okay, what's important to me? What's important to me is to pay my mortgage. What's important to me is my daughter's communion.
Hmm.
And then when you decide that, yes, those are things that I really want or those are really important to me, then you write them down or they're in your tabs or however you want to put it. And then you say, what is my plan or what is my strategy to meet my need or want? And you map
Ah.
it out and then you execute.
It seems so simple, but it feels so not.
Well, it can be simple, but then what complicates it is thinking in terms of, oh no, worry, 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 worst case scenario. Now it's
Right.
complicated. Now that feels really complicated and overwhelming. But if you break it down into the nuts and bolts of it, you're saying, okay, I'm going to pay my mortgage. How am I going to get this done? Step one, step two, step three, step four, pay my mortgage.
I love that. I love that I should get rid of that oh no word because that's kind of stemming a lot of my anxiety is I will think of the worst case scenario because I'm just so used to it. I don't know if it's something that growing up I had to deal with, or I mean, yeah, how do I know it's different for everybody, but and I know you just, you don't know me all that much, but like somebody like me who's been dealing with the oh no's in life, like why do we get this way? How
Mhm.
how do we become this person?
It's really because, okay, it's not you. It's not like you were born with it.
Right.
Instead, it's from like we're all trained. We're all brainwashed and trained and programmed in certain ways.
Hmm.
So let's just say like yeah, I don't know your background, but let's just say your family grew up with a lot of let's just say your mother was really prone to worry, or
Hmm.
let's say
Yes.
your family like your family had a lot of financial instability,
Hmm.
or let's just say, we're talking about Asians. A lot of us Asians come from immigrant families. So a lot of immigrant families, when they immigrated to the US, didn't have a lot of money, right?
Right.
So, whatever your unique experience is, somehow you were programmed to worry and think worst case scenario, whether because a lot of times in your childhood, worst case scenario did happen and things were really unstable, or your mother was a worrier, whatever it was. These were influences that you were subjected to growing up. So you
Hmm.
basically learned to think in terms of this oh no way. You've been probably doing it for years because it's literally what you learned. I like to think of it as like, if you grew up in a household where Russian was the language,
Hmm.
right? You just learn the Russian. That's like your language. But this whole like oh no way of thinking, and we all have habitual ways of thinking. So let's just say yours is the oh no, and that comes up a lot. That's the
Hmm.
language that was spoken in your family, or due to early experiences, that's the language that was trained into you to experience life through oh no, oh no, oh no, worst case scenario.
Wow. You're like nailing me without even really knowing my past. I'm just so in awe of that. Because yeah, I've noticed that I need to change the way I speak too as a parent now, because I have an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old, and I'm watching my 8-year-old slowly try to be the perfectionist and try to be. She's basically a carbon copy of me, and I don't want her to have that anxiety like I had.
Because kids will absorb all of it. Because basically, now, just like your parents or whoever your caretakers were, they were literally your world. They were literally your environment growing up, right?
Mhm. Yep.
Th- That was your world. So, just like that, how you speak, how you feel, how you conduct yourself, you're literally your kid's world. So they're taking in everything. You're literally their template. You and your family or whoever is most around them, they are literally their blueprint for life. So they're taking it all in. So if they're feeling and hearing oh no's and worry and fear, they're taking that in. They're absorbing
Right.
it. It's in the air.
Right. No, I appreciate you saying that, but I'm going to move away from psychoanalyzing myself, but kind of, since people are listening in, I want to kind of give them some pointers, because we are going through a pandemic. The previous administration stating that this is the kung flu, the, Chinese disease, and causing fear, and now there we have this whole Asian hate, situation going on, and people are afraid. I mean, I had a cousin who is married to a Chinese woman, and they were recently out and about riding a bicycle, and a couple approached their bicycle as their child was sitting there and said, "Uh-oh, that's a COVID bike right there," without even knowing who my cousins were. Just stated that. And now my cousin is afraid to go out because she doesn't want her or her child to be attacked. Like, how do we deal with stuff like that?
There's so many ways to answer that question. And what I would say is to like everything that we've been talking about up until this point, which is, to withstand everything that's going on in the world right now, we really need to take very good care of ourselves, right? And that's doing everything to take care of our mental and emotional health. Um, so, like we've talked about, um, talking to people, thinking in terms of what you think, what you feel, what you want, what you need, and
Hmm.
taking actions to support those things. What we just talked about with you is like our habitual ways of thinking about things, which literally affect how we experience life. So
Hmm.
being really curious about like, how do I typically act? How do I typically feel? How do I typically think of things? And then being really willing to consider and do the hard, it actually takes hard work to make these shifts, to shift and change our habitual ways of approaching things that are causing us undue stress or unnecessary hardship. Of course, there's real hardships, but there's ways that we make things harder for ourselves by the way we approach things. So there's that. And then, when it comes to Asian hate and the hate crimes, yes, that's real. Yes, that's happening. And I think that in addition to taking the best care of ourselves as possible, is helping each other and supporting each other as much as possible. And and then just the reality of needing to be more vigilant than ever. I'm Korean American, grew up in LA. I've
Mhm.
never, ever been concerned or worried in LA. And I can't believe that I have to actually be vigilant now. It's just starting like a few months ago, in Los Angeles as a Korean American, but that's the reality of, what we're living in. And I don't know if the hate is going to stop or subside. But in the meantime, I think all we can do is help each other, help ourselves, and be really vigilant when you are out in public.
I agree. I agree. Absolutely. Absolutely. And going back to, talking about the way we were trained and the way we were, what I'm gathering from all of this and how I can stop what my parents were doing with me is definitely opening up more to my kids and letting them know it's okay to talk about things. And I think that's definitely a point. If anything, anyone learns from this, besides the fact that I have mental issues, but the fact that we should definitely, speak up and be heard.
And you don't have mental issues. We
I
all
know.
struggle with things. Like we're all just struggling with things.
Right,
And
right. But it's hard because I think it's a way for me to deflect. I think a lot of people deflect and a lot of people will make a joke out of it just to lighten the
yeah, yeah,
situation.
yeah, 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 yeah. And and the thing, yeah, because if you deflect, then you also it puts a distance between you and the thing that is troubling you. So as much as possible, like to not deflect, to just let it land. Just let whatever's
Hmm.
going on for you land, because that way that gives you the opportunity to deal with whatever needs to be dealt with. And then when it comes to children, a lot of parents like. Of course, like parents want to do the best for their children and want to tell children, like, hey, you're feeling, it's okay to feel and it's okay to talk about things, but kids do as they see their parents do, right?
Hmm.
So if
Right.
they see their father saying like, oh, dad said it's okay to talk about things and dad said it's okay to feel things and feelings are okay, but they don't see you doing that, then they're not going to do that, because they're like, well, dad says that but I don't see him
Uh,
doing that. So
uh-huh.
the more they see that it's they because they're kids are smart, they pick up on everything. So if they can start seeing in the family that, oh, feelings are okay, it's okay to feel sad, it's okay to feel scared, then they get the message like, oh, I guess it's okay to feel sad sometimes, I guess it's okay to feel scared sometimes, I guess it's okay to talk and tell someone I don't feel good right now. But they got to know, they got to see it for themselves that it's actually okay, not just be told it's okay. They need to see the proof. It's not to say like,
I
if you're struggling, like go cry your eyes out to your young child, but it's kind of like in age appropriate ways demonstrating like it's okay to feel down sometimes and that's okay.
Right. And I think too, as a parent, I mean, I feel like as a person in general, I am a little more emotional than how my father was because I wanted to correct that situation where he really was just a blank wall. He never really showed emotion. And I wanted to be different for my child. But you're right. It is, actions do speak louder than words. And if I'm telling my kid one thing, but showing them an opposite, they're gonna be confused.
Exactly. Exactly. And they're gonna follow more your action example, not what you're telling them.
Oh man.
It's
So let's
like,
recap. Oh,
yeah.
go ahead. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
It's just like if a parent is telling kids to eat vegetables because vegetables are good for them, but then they don't eat vegetables. I mean, kids aren't going to eat vegetables.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Well, but let's recap. What, for those that are listening in right now that are dealing with mental health issues, what what can they do?
Okay. I don't even want to call it mental health issues because
Okay.
that can be like a little slippery slope stigmatizing. How about just
Gotcha.
like if you're struggling with anything, you know,
Gotcha.
if you're
I love
struggling
that.
with anything, then number one is treat it as though that's really important and it really deserves your attention. It really deserves your time and attention and energy if you're struggling with anything. So make it a priority and make it important. And then see who you feel comfortable talking to and sharing that with. So that way so you don't have to bear it alone. And whether it's a professional or a friend or a colleague, talk to somebody, literally just talk to somebody. And then, in terms of helping yourself, along with the treating it like matters and it's important, your struggle, really start thinking in terms of how you think or what you think, how you feel, what you want, what you need, because those things are indicators and give you pointers in terms of what direction to go in. The other thing is to start being really curious about how you think about things and how you approach things that are kind of like thematic. They're kind of like just general themes in your life. Like, your example was the oh no, but
Hmm.
everyone has patterns. And be really curious about what your typical approach is to things and how possibly, and this is where a professional could be really important and really helpful, is get some help in being able to see and approach things differently so you have a better outcome.
Oh my gosh, I love all those tips. I love that whole, I mean, within this 30 minutes, I feel a lot better about myself. And I feel like I wish you were here in San Diego because I would love to just switch therapists and have you as my therapist because I feel like you've helped me within this 30 minutes. And I feel like, yeah, just talking about stuff definitely helps. It takes a weight off of you.
So the talking helps. So you got the direct experience. Like, oh, you feel better because you're talking, but also another reason you're feeling better is because you're seeing there's so much you can do to feel better. Like it's not like I mean, there's things in everyone's reach to help them to feel better. This is real stuff. This isn't hocus pocus. This isn't take a pill. This is like, oh my God, there's like 4 or 5 things you can do to help yourself feel better this week, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh my gosh, you have so much for me to think about right now. If anyone is actually wanting to reach out to you or, wanting to get more advice, how can they contact you?
It's I have a website. It's dramykim.com, and people can just email me too, which is dramykim@gmail.com, and I'm happy to answer any questions about mental health, therapy, all of that stuff. Because finding a therapist can feel kind of daunting. No, like trying to figure out what to expect in the process can be a little daunting and overwhelming. So I can even just answer questions about to sort of like demystify the whole process.
Well, real briefly, yeah, tell me about that. Like, if somebody's really wanting to find a therapist, how do you know you found the right one?
So, first of all, okay, you do a search online, talk to people. A lot of times word of mouth is very powerful in terms of finding a great therapist. There's a whole range of quality of therapists from excellent ones to mediocre ones to not so good ones. So it
Hmm.
might take some work to really find someone who's great. Um, you first start by calling a few people and talking to each one briefly over the phone, get a sense of whether they sound good to you or not. Do they sound competent? Do you like their energy? Just get a sense of them over the phone. And then once you meet with people, now most things are online through Zoom. Um, you might need to meet with 1 or 2 or 3 different people before you find like that the right one. And you should know within a few sessions, within 2 or 3 sessions, where you feel like, okay, something's happening. You don't even have to know what's going on, but you have to feel like you're being helped. And if
Hmm.
you don't feel like you're being helped and there isn't benefit, you're not feeling benefited,
Hmm.
then move on and meet with someone else. And the search can take a little bit of time, but really, if you find the right therapist for you, it will be life changing.
Absolutely. I agree with you. Well, we're going to definitely put up your information on our social media pages. Of course, if you want to learn about today's show, you can visit asianvoicesradio.com and we'll have all of that information for Dr. Amy Kim. Dr. Kim, thank you so much for joining us today and talking about mental health issues and all that stuff. And we just appreciate your time.
You're welcome. And I hope more Asians just feel more comfortable about talking, because it's so, all humans need this, whether you're Asian or not. Like, all humans struggle and all humans need to talk to people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you have any suggestions for future topics, feel free to reach out to us. You can also subscribe to this podcast and be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. But until next time, I'm Hula Ramos, and on behalf of my guest, Dr. Amy Kim, we'd like to thank you for listening, and please join us next week for another exciting and thought-provoking Asian Voices radio show. Take care, and we'll see you next time.